Guys, welcome back to another episode of Bar Shifts and Bullshit. I'm your host, Jay Bird, here with the lovely Lavender. I'm going to talk to you today about power trips and people that abuse their authority and people and the difference between that and good leadership. I think we've all had that scenario where we've had troubles deciding, whether somebody's being a boss or being a leader. And I feel like those two words really do hold water in both directions that they go. That being said, know yourself is the biggest part. If I were to give advice to somebody that's taking on a leadership role versus, actually being one, and understanding, and from our point of view, where we're not really bosses, where I'm not a boss, but I know you do management. But I think the real struggle between two is deciding, what's appropriate, what's easy to be said, and then from an employee standpoint and understanding the workload that a management actually brings to the table. Mm-hmm. So the struggle is acknowledging, what's important and what's not.
See, in my field right now, where I work, I work closely with the owners and the GM and the assistant GM. So I'm very good at doing what I'm told. So that's what I do. I don't do anything extra. And, I have the other bartenders telling me that you're a great manager and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just doing what I'm told to do, and I just go with the flow. It's easier that way. Instead of creating problems and drama and lying about something, it's easier to just follow what your other managers or your owners are telling you to do.
Well, and I've talked to several different people, and I've taken some leadership roles, and I do enjoy it. Especially, I love to teach. That is one of my favorite things to do.
I do too.
And there's a huge different standpoint from several different leaderships. If I'm leading somebody into a situation, I'll teach you how I do it, and I'll teach you the shortcuts. And it's funny is Bill Gates had a phrase. No, it wasn't Bill Gates. It's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had a phrase that he used to use within his company. He told everybody, he's like, you want to find out all the shortcuts and getting the most production in your company, find the laziest employee you have. And that was a true statement. It was great. I used to work with this guy at a restaurant, and we clean up in dish pit. I worked from dish all the way up, and clean up from dish pit was freaking awful. We'd be there about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And one of the biggest duties was mopping, sweeping, or sweeping and mopping, and then squeegeeing the whole floors, because you can't let stagnant water sit in a restaurant. It's a health code violation. So squeegeeing it would take forever, because anybody that's worked in a restaurant for a decade and a half knows that most of the drains are at the point of every floor. Why engineers see fit to build a restaurant like that beats the hell out of me.
Yeah, I know.
But if there are some engineers listening to this podcast, just keep in mind that if you can make the water flow toward the drains and not away from it, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
But so we'd have those handheld squeegees to squeegee the tops of all the counters and stuff. And my buddy, laziest person on the planet, man. We'd talk about it all the time. If he wasn't so damn funny, if I didn't have such a blast working with him all the time, I'd lose my shit because I couldn't get nothing out of him. But I called him one day, and he was using the floor squeegee to do the countertops and stuff. And I started laughing. I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Man, cutting our time down by 5 minutes." It was just stupid shit, little quips. Well, and before I knew it, I actually put that in my work regimen. I learned something from him, and then I started teaching people behind me. Started taking my position how to do these corners just to save their life throughout the day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it still holds true today. People are still following it. But when I think of power trips and I think about leadership, I always think of that meme, and I know you've seen it. Is that poster of there's a group of people pulling a load of stones, right? And they're pulling a load of stones, and you see that one at the top with a whip just lashing the people to drag the stones, right? And then you see the ideal leadership, and you see the one person at point leading a group full of people pulling the stones. And in my experience and my excitement, I will respect and get excited about a boss that'll come in there and go through the trenches with me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
not only that, I can learn from somebody that's doing the work in front of me. And I feel and honestly, and I know that's very militaristic to kind of see that mindset, but I would follow anybody that's that's showing me firsthand that they're willing to get their hands there.
It works for a reason because you're seeing it firsthand from the people that either own the place or are in charge. So obviously you feel some kind of way and you want to copy what they're doing.
Well, and not only that, their work's never done. If they're you got to understand, from a boss perspective, like if they're willing to dig through the trenches with you, they have to do that job that you're currently doing with you, and then the rest of their job. Yeah. So there's a lot of different attributes that people don't really think about. So if somebody's we'll do it from a bartender perspective, right? You're making all these drinks, your bar's full, and your boss comes over there and is like helping your bar back. So, and you've had experience with this from your actual owners.
Yes.
And they'll come in, they'll fill up your bar, they'll fill up your juices, they'll run and get you ice, and they'll take bus tubs and stuff, get your dishes and stuff out of the way. And I say lowly, it's a actually respectful position. Anybody that's willing to bar back for me and take care of me, I have the utmost respect for. But I'll say it like that, like a boss that owns an establishment that's willing to take on the lowliest position in their restaurant to make sure it's successful. That's a great owner to me. That's a great leader that's willing to do that work. And you got to think, at the end of your day, when you're done cleaning and stuff, they're still doing payroll. They're making sure that your hours are done correctly, and they're making sure your tip out goes in the right direction. So, and that's what sucks about being an entrepreneur, or it's exciting at the same time, depending on how you look at it.
Depends on where you go.
I've met a lot of unsuccessful business owners, like they've owned businesses for decades and a half, and they just got tired of the workload because it never ends. But me personally, I enjoy it. Like if I'm running my own business, I feel like it's a success if I can look at a business and the people that are working with me are happy. Like if they enjoy coming to work every day, my job's done. It's not necessarily about the net profit or the revenue that my business brings.
No, it's morale.
Yeah, morale. Like if I'm making a difference in somebody else's life, that makes a huge. It sounds corny, but it makes a huge difference to me. If people come in and are excited to come into work, that's a huge business standpoint. That's a successful business to me. If I can make enough revenue to pay all of my bills and pay my business's bills and attributes, and my employees are paid and happy, that's a successful business. I don't have to be a millionaire tomorrow. I mean, it'd help. I'd be excited. I ain't gonna lie. But to me, that's good leader. Now we've had difference of opinion on a power trip struggle. People like I've heard different bosses or different managers come up to me and be like, you know what, you're replaceable. You don't have to threaten me with my job, man.
No.
Like I know
we all know that we are always replaceable.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll go through and I'll take on 3 times the workload as just an employee, not even a boss, where I'll take on way more on my workload or whatever to make myself irreplaceable. But deep down, I know I could be replaced in a week. Yeah. There's 1.3 billion people on the planet, 3.3 billion people on the planet. You'll find somebody that's better than me if you're really, really working at it. But so you don't have to threaten me with my job. Well, yeah, like and I've had people tell me like, oh, well, if you don't do such and such, such, that's out of my job predicament. You don't like I feel like that's an insult. Yeah. Like, all right, you want to replace me. That's fine. I'll find another job. There's somebody else looking for a replacement for one of their employees too. And we live in a small town, so we circulate employees like it's their job. Yes. Like at some point or fashion, I've either worked with you or know somebody that's worked with you at a different point of standpoint. You either have great references or you don't. You either burn your bridges or you didn't. But as a boss, if you're going to tell me that everybody's replaceable except for me, that's a pompous fucking attitude.
That is.
Yeah. And I've seen bosses that, I've seen employees, not necessarily bosses, but I've seen employees just get away with murder, within a restaurant or a bar top, and they just freaking go all out and do whatever the hell they want to, and then know that they're irreplaceable, because of actions spoken, right? Yeah. Like they get away with everything, and everybody wonders why, whatever. And it's not necessarily about the why. It's more or less about that person specifically acknowledging the fact that they can't be touched, and they'll brag about it, and they'll get pissed off when somebody else gets somewhat of the same treatment. Because if somebody else is getting that treatment, they're at risk of losing what they have already. and that's usually a scarier setback.
See, and one of the places that I worked at, the owner, she would treat everybody like a child.
I hate
Yes, I hate that too. And it was always received pretty poorly. Like, nobody wanted to be around her, anything. She was the only adult in the whole building. Like, no one liked her because of that. And I get, because of her background, you know, that's why it was so easy for her to treat everyone like children, because that's what she was used to. Well, then the last place that we had worked at, then we had the one that was like, you have to make
jobs we work together.
Yeah. She was like, you have to make cocktails this way, or, you know, have mood swings. You can never tell what mood she was in.
And if you have to tiptoe, if you feel like you're walking around eggshells around the people you work with, and just to have a comfortable work environment, it's not where you want to be.
No, because you're supposed to leave all those feelings and emotions and problems at the door when you walk into your workplace.
So it's harder for employees like that, and to me, that's what establishes a good boss versus a bad one.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you'll see employees, man, they've had a bad day, they have a bad attitude because they've had a bad day, and that's an employment mentality.
Yes.
But when you step up and you take like a boss or manager or supervisor role, you got to leave that shit at home.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not harping on you guys. If you get it, you get it. Like, I have this boss that I used to work with over here in Cherokee, and I love her. She's freaking phenomenal. And you would never be able to tell that she has, like, you know, I mean, and you would be able to relate that she's got 3 kids, and she's got she's got an older home, so she's always doing maintenance on her home. Very, very stressful lifestyle outside of work. Never be able to tell it while she's at work, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you were good friends with her, she would kind of like shed some light on what her daily life's out, especially if you're like on break or whatever. She would shed some light on what her life's like outside of work. But she would never bring that shit into work. She would never lose her shit because she had a bad day. Like, she was incredible as far as like that goes. You'd never know that her life was just it was a hurricane once she left the door.
Yeah.
She was great about leaving that shit at the door. But some people bring that shit into work, and like, they'll have a bad attitude. They'll get ringed out by their boss. Their boss's boss will ring them out, and they'll get in trouble. And so it's definitely one of those, if mama ain't happy, nobody happy kind of attitude. And that's very petty at a supervisor standpoint, because you know the people below you can't do anything about it. Like, they can bitch to you and they can go to your boss's boss again, but that's why you're in the predicament to begin with. So if you are in a supervisor position or higher up position, please acknowledge the fact that you're A, not untouchable, and B, like, you can't take out your emotions or use your emotions to downplay your employees. You can't, you can't look at the person below you and be like, nah, man, I'm having a bad day, so you're gonna have a shitty day. You can't bring that into the workplace.
And I get that there's some of those people out there that work extremely well under pressure. Like, I'm one of them, but not when I'm angry or upset. But I do know some people that I do work with now that do work better when they're angry or upset. They dish out better product. But like, at the same time, you can't. You have to be consistent the entire way through, because you have so many other employees that depend on you. You know.
Well, not only that, that's kind of funny that you bring that up, because I'm one of those. I don't know if you can relate or not, but with both my ex-wives. So both my ex-wives, if we were to get in a big fight, like knock down, drag out, we're screaming at each other kind of argument or whatever, I go wash dishes, or I'll clean the house, I'll do laundry.
See, I do the same thing. I will clean, or I will deep clean.
I gotta do something with that, like, that untapped energy, like, because both of mine would like say their piece and leave, or like, I'll get to the point. I'm one of those like that know where my anger is heading. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's gonna be bad. And if it's so bad that I'll just be like, listen, I can't do this right now. We're not going to have this conversation. I gotta get away from you. It's going to get bad. Like, so I'd leave. I'd either do laundry, I'd go wash dishes, or I'd freaking go walk for miles just to get away from you. If I'm that mad, I'm pissed. Like, I'm pissed. But that's what I do. And some people are a lot like that, where they just take all these hidden emotions, all this like untapped rage, and they have to put it somewhere, you know. And that's why like I said, in my off time, like I lift weights, and I play a local game. It's called stickball, and then I'll box. Like these are a lot of different things where I can let all this. I'm a man.
Yeah,
so
you have an outlet.
Yeah, I have outlets. I gotta have those outlets. I have to have a way to let that testosterone fucking go. Because if I don't, like, I'll lose my shit. Like, I'll have an aneurysm. My freaking head will start splitting at the end of the day if you make me hold it in.
Yeah.
And I'm not as bad. Like, obviously, I'm not young anymore, so like it's not as bad as it used to be. Usually, I can just kind of let shit play off now. Where things like I can name restaurants right now that I've worked in where there's like dents in the freaking like in the dish pit where I was freaking young. And it's funny is like I'll walk some of those restaurants now and they'll be like, "Oh, you remember when you did this?" And then they'll point to it, and I'm like, "Oh man." And then back then, like even though you're letting all that anger out and like you have something to show for it, it's kind of embarrassing now.
Yeah.
Like people will point that out, and I'm like, "Man, I was a douchebag." like that was a child tantrum that I threw and made a big scene where I shouldn't have. And that's I think I'm just old now, so like that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I love the place that I work at right now, because we all, including the staff, like we all work cohesively well together. If anyone's having a really bad day, we're very good with talking to each other about it and letting each other know what's going on and stuff like that. Minus a few, but like I absolutely love the owners because they don't have that power trip mentality.
Yeah. Well, and there's that's a different mindset too. So like I've had both of these bosses, right?
Yeah.
There's that one boss that was like, you know what? Because we made these numbers is because I'm here to make things better. We made these numbers because I worked here.
Yeah.
You know, I've had those bosses that are just real pompous and really acting like, oh, well, we wouldn't have made these numbers if I didn't work here. Mm-hmm. And then I've had bosses go out of their way and show gratitude for the reasons why we really made those numbers. Yeah. I've actually had this here recently. We had done a huge amount of sales, like, and set like a new record for all the restaurants because I work for a corporation now. Yeah. And we set like the highest sales per that day. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So they did a count from the day that we made sales from the previous year, mm-hmm. and then compared it to that day. So we beat that score, right? So we made more in revenue that day, and then we also exceeded more sales than any other restaurant in our location, or like in our area. Uh-huh. So, and our boss was grateful enough to let us know, like go out of her way to tell us that she was grateful for the work that we put into it. That's a good boss to me. Mm-hmm. Like you, like let us know that we wouldn't have got there without your help. You know, like somebody that shows appreciation for the efforts that you're putting in. That's gold to me. You know what I'm saying?
See, and that's what I love about mine too, because like she goes out and she'll buy us food for the employees and everything for the day, knowing that we are having a really rough day because we are getting our asses kicked. Or, you know, she'll cook for us. Like, how many places do you know that they will cook for their employees? Yeah.
Well, and that just simple gestures as a boss will speak volumes.
And they say thank you, you know, like we appreciate you so much and we're so grateful that you're here. And, you know, they say things like this. And this is like a huge boost to the morality.
Like it just lets people know, like, listen, your efforts did not go unnoticed. Yes. And that's huge for me. Yes. Like if you acknowledge the fact, you know what, and this wasn't from a boss. This wasn't from a boss perspective, but I was so excited about it. I was working in the well just a couple of days ago. And I was getting my ass kicked. I ain't gonna lie. I had drinks because I was working well, so I was doing the restaurant's drinks, not even from my bar top. And I was killing it, but I was sweating. It was gross. I was making drinks like left and right, and I was putting them out as fast as I could get them out. And there's this dude he was one of the guests. He was just staring at me and never asked me anything. Well, and I get paranoid if I can see somebody looking at me at the corner of my eye. And then I asked one of my associates. I was like, hey man, would you check on this guest? I can't get to him. And she did. And she took care of him. But the dude looked at me and he was like, nah man. He's like, I didn't want you to stop doing what you were doing. He's like, I didn't want you to feel some kind of way about it. Mm-hmm. He's like, I just was really impressed with what you were doing. He's like, and I felt good about myself because he's like, I used to own clubs in Miami. He said, and I would have loved to have had somebody like you that could just do this. And I was like, oh hell yeah! I was like,
Oh,
thanks.
yeah, I
man.
remember this
appreciate it."
story.
Yeah. And I was so freaking pumped. Well, I didn't even slow down for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And just that boost of morale, man, will just freaking that's
It does wonders for a person, especially when you're just the employee. Like, it does so much for you, like your headspace and everything.
well, and from a different perspective, don't get too cocky and don't get too comfortable.
No.
I'm the world's worst. If I'm busy all day, I'll put my head down and grind it out.
Yeah.
I love grinding it out, and working hard all day. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. If it's dead slow, I am the biggest slack ass at work. Mm-hmm. Like if it's dead slow, I don't want to do anything. I'm just kind of moseying around. I'm talking. I'm playing around. I'm goofing off, and then I'll get sidetracked and not pay attention to my overall job, and then I'll get behind all of a sudden. World's worst. I do that shit all the time. If I'm busy, and that's why I like busier days. Like I'd rather work weekends as to weekdays because of that scenario.
The volume.
Yeah, I like the volume. Which, don't get me wrong, if I can sit around and talk to guests and have a good time and give them a better experience, I take pride in that. I get excited about it. But if there's nothing, like I'm a lazy, I'm lazy. I'd rather and I'll sit down and clean and whatever. If I can find me a project, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But like same scenario as if I'm working in the well and I ain't got a drink for like 10 minutes, I'll go and dick around and then come back and there'll be like 5 tickets and then they've been waiting. And shit like that. If there's not enough consistency, I get lazy, and that's one of my biggest flaws as an employee for sure.
So, like, what I do now is I compare all the places I've worked at to all the places that I could have worked at to the location I work at now. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, like the overall experience, how would you even explain that? Just this location is probably the best customer service experience job that I've had as a whole.
I think that's because we're in a smaller town.
I don't know if it's because we're in a smaller town, because I've had many jobs in the small town that they were horrible. But overall, the experience here with everybody that works there, the owners, all of them, has been amazing.
Oh, that's pretty, and it's usually hit or miss. It's very rare. It does happen. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that I hear guests come up and be like, you know what, the employee didn't interact with me, didn't have conversations with me. I did not feel like I was appreciated. At least as a guest, I've never really heard that a whole awful lot. But we live in a tourist town too. Yeah. So naturally, I think for the most part, unless you do construction or like one of these maintenance kind of positions or whatever here, or anything in industrial. Most people are brought up in customer service here. Yeah. So you learn how to talk to guests fairly quickly. You kind of have to, especially here in Cherokee, because we have so many events and celebrations and stuff here to where like tourists want to know what life is like here. Yeah. So we have to learn how to talk to people regularly to put the right influence in the air. Because that's another thing, not to get too into heritage or like to over explain that situation. I'll get over it real quick, but me personally, like from a Cherokee standpoint, I don't like when people misconstrued what we're all about. I mean, we're on the eastern side. We're on the eastern side. Western Indians did the teepees. We didn't do that. Mm-hmm. We weren't the traveling kind of Native Americans, right? And that's one of the simple mindsets. And that's another thing, coming in from a tourist perspective. If they come in asking questions and they want to know more about it, I'm more than happy to tell you. Yeah. I don't like when you assume you know everything about what I've lived through my whole life. You know what I'm saying? And my folks was really, really cool about like taking me to the museums, making me study, making me learn where we came from. Mm-hmm. So I take pride in that. And like me, my little brother, my little sister, that was every year thing. Mm-hmm. Like she harped on it, like on how to know where we came from. And even then, there's still a lot of things that history, like my son is a history buff now. Yeah. And he's learning more about my area than I ever knew. And it's crazy because so many people are learning more and more about our culture. Mm-hmm. And like I said, if you take the initiative to learn where I came from, I'm more than happy to tell you that information. Yeah. And I think that's where you learn the customer service skills here. Like because people always have these questions.
Yeah,
they want to know. They're genuinely interested. So it's good to know where you come from, so you have the right information to tell people, instead of getting like a weird attitude about it and just be like, oh no, I can't tell you that information.
Well, I get it all the time because people always think that I'm Cherokee, and I'm like, no, I'm Asian.
I don't know. You do look like us more than I do, and I'm always disappointed.
But yeah, I had to learn about the heritage and the culture of the area because I get a lot of questions working out here.
Well, and like I said, you're kind of sewn in, and I don't think it. And it's not because you're mistaken to be Cherokee all the time, but like you're sewn in because you've genuinely taken an interest and you play around and you understand why we are the way we are.
Yeah.
So like when I talk trash or we're all talking trash, you laugh with us because you know why.
I do.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. Well, I also, like anywhere I work, I take a huge interest in learning everything about it, the area, all of it, so that I could better answer questions. And I do it with any job. I did it back in California all the time.
Well, and that's just blatant, like that's just in your face respectful.
Yeah.
Like if you're willing to take the time to learn something about somebody, that's a huge amount of respect that's just not given anymore.
Definitely all about respect.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a bad rap that people in general kind of get, is they go in thinking they know all this stuff and they don't, and they have no clue.
Oh God, and that's like one bad experience I had with the workplace too, because they demanded respect because of who they were, and I'm just like, I don't care who you are. Like, I wouldn't have known who you were if I didn't work here.
And there's like a hazy line there, though, right? So you got to get respect. You got to give respect to get it. Like I live by that statement. But my grandpa my grandpa was a missionary Baptist. He built churches in other countries. Like, he was a full-on philanthropist while working in did things for the environment. Like, his job was helping the environment. He worked for Environment and Water here, and then he was also he was a Vietnam vet. He had 3 Purple Hearts. Somebody that's went through all of that will have my respect without a conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I will, like, obviously you've earned in life like who you are. I'm not going to disrespect you. I ain't going to make you earn my respect. You've earned it. Yeah. So that's where that hazy line is. Like, just because you're boss, I'm not just going to. If you're a boss, I'll give you enough respect to see where you're going to go with it. But
see, and he was humble about it, though. He didn't like throw it in your face and say, "Look, this is what I did with my life." Yeah. So there is a difference.
Yeah. Well, and he was great. He was a great storyteller. I loved listening to that man talk, and I could have made a lifetime just listening to his stories. Yeah. And or his advice. Not that I ever took it. Like, I was always he tried his best. He really did. But I learned these things about him by having conversations. Yeah, he was like, that's where he was humble about it. He didn't flaunt it and be like, "Oh, I was a Vietnam vet. Yeah, I deserve respect." Like, "Oh, I did this. I deserve respect." Like, he did everything by action. Yeah. And I remember one of my earliest memories of him is we were all kids, and he'd get out his huge Ford truck, and he'd put a 24-foot trailer on it, and he'd give us all like vests, like me and like some of the neighborhood kids and my cousins, like all these like reflective vests. We'd go out and pick up trash, like all over Whittier. We'd go through and pick up trash and put it on the back of the trailer. And we loved helping him out. That was never an issue. But like the way he used to present these jobs was so fun. It was nonchalant. He'd be like, "All right, we're going to take care of the community." Yeah. We were making a huge difference. I felt like we were, but he made us feel like that. It never was a job with him. Like, it was like we were making a difference for, and he put it together. And just the way he presented it made him a great leader, versus just the boss. He could have just as easily came out and like, "You're going to do this today, this today, this today." But he was right there with us, man. And granted, like, he was older, so he wasn't out picking up trash, but he put the trailer together. He got us the vests. Yeah. He was driving us around the truck. He'd laugh when we'd start fighting down the mountains, like he was right there with us the whole time. And to me, that's a great leader. He didn't demand anything. He showed us what this was about.
See, and like one of the places that I worked at, the owner, she would tell us that, oh, I'm putting this together for this community service, but she would just tell us that she was doing it. She wouldn't even try to include us or ask us if we wanted to donate anything. But over here at this location that I work at now, like, she would say, oh, I'm putting together, some money, donations, toys, whatever, for the senior citizen community or whatnot. And does anybody want to help me donate or things like that,
anything you can help with would be greatly
Yes,
appreciated.
exactly. Yeah. And she would always say, you don't have to. I'm not telling you have to. But if you would like to, this is what I'm doing and this is when I'm doing it. I fucking love her.
Literally as simple as saying, I appreciate it if you'd help, And I love that. And there's a lot of people like that around here.
There are.
A lot of people.
But it's because, like, a lot of them have come from nothing.
Yeah.
They've built all of this themselves, and that's highly respectable in itself.
Well, and that's what I worry about with new generations coming up. And I hate that we harp on this all the time.
That they're so entitled and they just expect it.
But it's a real thing. Like, there's a lot of younger generations that just expect things out of the world. And that, you and I didn't grow up in a world like that. No. We grew up in a world like you appreciate what you have and you earn what you get. And that's just, it's kind of dying, and that makes me nervous. Like, I'm trying to instill that in my youngins, that, like, if you want something, you're going to have to go out and get it.
Definitely.
And then the world doesn't owe you anything. Mm-hmm. And granted, I have a lot of perks in life, and some I've taken advantage of, and I'm not, like, that is my fault.
Yeah.
And still, there's a lot of mistakes that I pay for up to date,
Mm-hmm.
But I acknowledge it. I'm still earning. I'm still doing the best I can with what I got. But, and that's funny. We were talking about, like, different events. You and I have a mutual friend that does a lot of things from domestic violence, and this is something that she has struggled with personally. That's why it hits home for her. But every year she goes through a lot of trouble to help people in those scenarios. Yeah. Like, she set up benefit dinners. She's done donations and like different raffles and different things. She's done this for as long as I met her, from day one, and that was probably, that had been at least 7 years ago, give or take. And she still does it. It never slows her down. And there's a whole lot of people that understands and has used their life struggles to show a better lifestyle for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that to me, that's a good idea of a good leader, somebody that's willing to pay it forward. I don't want you to struggle as much as I have, so I'm going to try to make this easier for you.
Yeah.
And that's a rare thing from people now. So you'll hear me harp on freaking entitlement and a lot of all this stuff, because I don't think I owe anybody anything, unless I directly, influence something somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But at the same time, you don't feel like anyone owes you anything either, because you work hard for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, but at least, and that's the world, and I feel like that makes for a stronger lifestyle.
Stronger lifestyle and a stronger work ethic. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I always told my son, man. I was like, you're reaching a generation of people that really genuinely don't want to work.
Yeah.
And, which I know it sounds crazy that people might want to work, but the lazy generation, I tell my son all the time, I'm like, listen, man, you learn a good work ethic, you're going to be 10 steps ahead of everybody in the game. And I have this uncle that used to tell me all the time, he's like, man, you don't have to be the best at everything. Mm-hmm. He's like, work harder than the person next to you. He's like, make it into a competition. Nobody will outwork you. Yeah. And I've lived by that. And like I said, I'm getting older. I'm getting more tired now. It's a little bit more difficult with some of these younger cats. But but I remember I had a competition one time, and we were miserable. Me and my buddy, we had worked like 73 hours one week, and we had started, and we were like, we were one-upping each other. I was like, I got to work 6 days this week. And he's like, I got to work 7. He's like, but I only have to work the morning shift on my 7th day. And then before we knew it, we were working every single day just to outdo each other. And I remember we worked, it was awful. We worked 12 straight days in a row, no days off. And we were mean to each other. Like we were waiting for one of us to give up. And neither one of us was backing down until finally our boss called us. We were at home, like he was at his house, and I was at mine, and my boss called me up, and he's like, listen, he's like, you're getting really, really irritable. He's like, you haven't had a day off in 2 weeks. He's like, I don't want you to come into work. Yeah. And I was like, I'll just come in for a couple hours. And he laughed, and he was like, hey, man, I know what you guys are doing. He's like, I already talked to your boy on the other phone. He said that he wouldn't come into work if you wouldn't come into work. I was like, all right. So we ended up having a tie on this competition, but we were like, that's how competitive I grew up. And like I said, I don't know if I can do that shit anymore because I know how miserable we were. Like that was a hard lesson to learn.
It definitely is. So then tell me, what do you do, or how do you handle somebody in a position that does end up having power trip issues?
That's tough. That's a tough situation to have to deal with, because I'm more of a let action speak for itself.
Yeah.
You know, I'll put my head down because there's always a boss's boss's boss. Mm-hmm. Always. Like even in a small, you know, partnership or sole proprietorship, you know, you got these people that own their own businesses. And if you're a boss like that, like you own your own business, 9 times out of 10, if you started it from the ground up and you didn't inherit it, you know what it's like to have to make that work, and you wouldn't treat employees like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and then so if I'm dealing with somebody with a power trip, I know somebody's going to notice eventually how these people are, and then they'll burn their own bridges behind them. Now, if I'm fed up, and this is not the right reaction, but if I'm fed up, I'll call you out on it. I'm the world's worst for letting you dig your own grave, and then I'll show you, I'll show you the shovels that you picked in the grass. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, if somebody came up to me and was like, you know what, you wouldn't have what you have if I didn't do this. Like, I had that kind of mentality with a power trip. Or nobody's safe but me. Like, I'm the only one that'll keep my job at the end of the day, and you are all replaceable. If it gets so bad, I'll nitpick. Like, I'll play around. Because at some point or another, I'm going to start leaving shit behind that nobody else can do but me. Yeah. Right? And then all of a sudden, they have to ask for my help to get it done. I'll just be like, you know what, I'll do it. But, you know, no, I'm usually a lot more petty. I'll be like, you know what, maybe my replacement will figure it out for you. and it gets real shitty real quick. So like, this is a very, very immature attitude to have.
Yeah, but at the same time, you are quick to come back.
Yeah. Well, and I'll call it, and I'm a very upfront person. Not necessarily confrontational, but like, I won't freaking unload all my insecurities on you in public.
Yeah.
Like,
you handle confrontation well.
Well, I just don't. I wouldn't want somebody blessing me out in the middle of everybody in front of all my coworkers or anything. So at some point, I know we'll either have a break together, or we'll have a smoke break together, or we're going to be off and we'll be chilling at some point. I'll find you at some point.
Yeah.
And I'll pull you off. I'll pull you off the side and I'll be like, listen, man. Like I understand your workload, and like I've had these conversations with bosses before, like supervisors. I'll be like, man, I understand you got a big workload. I get it. I understand it's stressful, whatever. But I want to address how you're talking to me, and then most of the time, if they're by themselves, they won't get in a defensive mode. Does that make sense? Because there's nobody to impress. There's nobody to stand firm with. You know, it's just me and you having a conversation. And if I feel strongly about it, you're going to have to take the time to understand how I feel about it. And I'll tell them, I'll be like, listen, man, I don't like the way you talk to me about this. There's a better way to have this conversation. I was like, I feel like I've earned enough respect for you not to talk to me like I'm a kid. And then if you can't respect that, or if we can't get on common ground, I will start looking for something better. Yeah. Because I was like, where you can replace me, I can find a better job. That's risky too, by the way.
It is.
Because like if you already have that conversation like that, that's a confrontational argument.
It is.
So they could just as well be like, you know what, you're absolutely right. Go find another job. But like I said, I'm a jack of all trades. I've bounced around from a lot of different jobs. Yeah. And I try to have really good references. Like I try really, really hard to leave on good standing. Most of the time, if not that same boss, another employee or another manager or supervisor will come up to me and be like, listen, I heard that you were leaving, or I heard that they're trying I heard that they're trying to replace you. Why? And I'll tell them. Like if it gets that far and you're being that petty as a boss, it'll come back to me wondering what my opinion is on the subject. Yeah. And as a boss, you need to understand, if you're going to have that attitude to another employee, you need to understand that, like, once it comes back to you, what argument are you going to have? Because it's going to be really, really fishy. Because if you work hard and you have a great work ethic, and like you're good to employees, and like you have a good references and good reputation and all that stuff, it's going to get back to your bosses and they're going to wonder why you're not happy. And I've had bosses at my job now come up to me and be like, is there any way we can make your life a little bit less miserable?
Yes.
That's a good boss to me. Like, if you're willing to, like, not necessarily accommodate every whim, but if you're willing to acknowledge that, you know, I'm miserable, like, let's find a way to make you happier. That's a good boss to me.
Yeah.
You know, that's a hard thing to do as a boss too, because you can't do. That's a hard thing to do, to acknowledge that you're going to help somebody out, and then you have to treat every other employee the same exact way. Nobody ever said about being a manager, or a supervisor, or an owner was going to be an easy task, and that's the first mistake.
And it's a learned trait too. They go, you know, as the years go on, it's experience after experience. It changes you.
Yeah.
You learn from things. You learn from mistakes, downfalls, all of it. But like for me, I follow a chain of command.
Yeah.
And if I notice right off the bat that the chain of command isn't working, I will go straight to the source. And if I can't go straight to the source, I go straight to the owner.
Yeah.
But you also have to realize that there's different situations, and they can't be petty.
Right.
Because, you know, remember, I had to go through that one last year. And honestly, it did get a little out of hand and did become petty. But what did I do at the end after talking to all of them? Then I went up straight to the source and I had a conversation. Yeah. And it was good and it went really well and it helped, you know. But for the most part, a lot of situations can be fixed.
Well, and that's another thing that sucks is being a supervisor or manager, is admitting when you fucked up.
Yeah.
That's that's a hard thing to do for any person in general. But I mean, I've lost my temper. I've done it. I'll give you an example. I lost mine on a host one time. Oh God. And it sucked too, because she's 18, like she's a child, and she's really good at her job, and she tries really, really hard. She works hard. There's nothing bad I can say about this girl. She just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Oh. It was a stressful day. I was in the well. I was getting bombarded by drinks, and she was in there trying to get there's ice on my well. She's trying to get ice for other drinks.
I remember.
Yeah, and I lost my shit at her. Yeah. I'll be like, I really, really just need you. And I was mean. I didn't mean to be as mean as I was. I was like, I really, really just need you the fuck out of my way. I was pissed, and she was like, I'm really, really sorry. She was like, I'm trying to help out. I was like, I just need you. I was like, go get ice anywhere else in the fucking restaurant. Just don't get it from here. I was like, I can't deal with it. And I felt so bad, and I know it bothered her. It really bothered her. So a couple of days later, I had to go up to her and I was like, "Listen, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted that way. Yeah. That's hard. That's hard for any person to do. It was hard for me to do. I'm not a saint by any means. I knew I was wrong and I fucked up. I had to go fix it. Yeah. Because and she was really grateful that I went, because old people don't do that. People don't just go out of their way to apologize for a mistake they made. But that's I'm weird about shit like that. Shit like that'll haunt me forever. I would never want somebody to feel some kind of way because I was an asshole that one time.
No, but also mind you, we work in restaurants, bars, breweries, and it's close quarters. So you work closely with these people all the time. It's not like a big ass casino where you can go months without seeing your coworker.
Well, that was the crazy shit about the situation, is she wasn't the one that was always in my way. I had 5 other employees that wouldn't get out of my way. She just happened to be the last one that I got, where she was the straw. She was the straw that brought the cables back. She just happened to be the wrong place, wrong time when I lost my shit. Yeah. And I felt so bad for her. I felt like because I'm a big guy. And I've been told several times I'm very intimidating until people talk to me. I would never want somebody to be afraid of me just because of my stature, or
because you snap.
Yeah, because I snapped that one time, and that would haunt me forever. I would never want to be that guy.
Yeah, but being in close quarters and working with these people, they get to know you. They become like family. Yeah. So they start to see things, or say you're not feeling well, or you're going through your emotions, or something's going on. They know something's bothering you.
Well, and that's something you got to be careful too, is being too comfortable.
Yes. You can't go out saying your whole business to everybody.
Well, yeah, and that's huge too. As a management or a boss, I don't want people knowing my personal affairs.
No, and they can use that against you at the same time.
Absolutely. In bigger corporations, bigger establishments, I don't need 30 other employees giving me advice about my home life. It's a mistake. Yeah. Because they don't really know what you're going through, or have never been in that situation before. and they may not handle it the same way you do it. Like nobody's going to know your innermost like horrific details about your life, nor will they know how to handle it. That's something that you like, and we've addressed that. Leave your problems at the door. Don't bring it into work or whatever. But that's another thing too, is handle your own shit at home.
Okay, but we are gonna have to cut this because we're up on 45 minutes,
right,
and
guys.
we got to go to work.
All right. Well, until next time, guys. Can't wait to hear from you. And if you have any feedback, be sure to email us, and we'll see you soon.